If you want your scraper to be able to produce shavings like this off a piece of cocobolo, you've got to prepare it properly. I'm going to introduce you some tools that we've developed that will help that process, particularly if you're new to this. Take your scraper blade, and what you have to recognize is that this edge must be straight and polished, and this edge, this surface and this surface have to be polished where it meets this corner created by the edge and the face. Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to make that edge perfectly straight and highly polished. And holding it like that on a stone is obviously difficult. So using a piece of torrefied wood, which is wood that has been processed in such a way that it no longer absorbs moisture, which means it's not going to change its shape when you get it wet because your stones are going to be lubricated most likely with water. And because it's wood, it's not going to wear your stone. This may wear eventually, but you can always put it on your shooting board and bring it back to being square. With that set on there, you hold your blade like so, squeeze it against it, and then move it forward and back. Now, what I like to do when I'm doing that is I twist it like this from one side then the other, simply wearing evenly the entire surface of the stone. Once you've gone through and prepared that on the coarse stone, because it's such a small surface, I jump and go right to my final stone and repeat the same process. When you're done, you should have an edge that shines like that. Now, that's half of it. The other half is the part that everything I've watched about this over the years just didn't make sense. And what didn't make sense is they had you polishing all of this to use right out here. And for those who would tell you to set it down and use your fingertips, with a thin blade like that, all you're really doing is getting pressure directly underneath your fingertip. It's not dispersing very well at all. So using the Charlesworth ruler trick, I came up with an idea. Place your steel rule on the side of your stone. This is another piece of torrefied wood. We've got 3 really powerful magnets sitting in cups to increase the strength. And this is designed to be the same length as the blade, but not as wide. So when you put that together, it leaves about 1/4 inch overhang. When you set that on the steel rule, it's now elevated. But as I put pressure on this, and the pressure is 1/4 inch away from the edge, it causes that last little bit of the blade to bend, so that as you work this forward and back, first on the coarse stone, then over onto the fine stone, and what I'll do is I'll work this, and then I'll flip it over, so as to use both sides of the stone before I have to stop and dress the stone. Once I've created what looks like a prepared surface from here to here, then I'll come over to my fine stone and go through that same process to polish it so that you eventually end up with a little polished strip right along that edge that meets that polished strip on that edge, and now you can create a beautiful cutting edge that will produce this type of shaving. Well, the last step, of course, is to go in and create your burr. I like to put it in my vise, keeping it far enough up out of the vise so that when I use my chisel and I set it like that, I can see the angle, and it's probably about 7 or 8 degrees. You don't want to create too much of a burr because you'll actually bring that hook right around and it'll be very difficult for it to pick up a shaving. And as far as a burnishing tool goes, well, I realized one day that I've taken the time to polish the back of my chisel. My chisel is harder than this. These have to be somewhere in the 50-52 Rockwell range in order for you to be able to process it. However, my chisels are 60-62, so this is harder than that. You want to lubricate it just a little bit of camellia oil. There. Don't need much. It just keeps from squealing when you're working it. Somewhere I had a rag. Set that on there like so. Now I put a piece of tape on the end so as not to cut myself. And because I'm laying it like this keeps the angle the same. And you're just going to go side to side. And then just wait until you can feel what feels like a really sharp burr. It doesn't take much. You don't have to put a lot of pressure. But at that point, you can then go over and use the scraper to dress woods that you can't do with your hand plane.